Welcome to Keto Meals and Recipes.com. Because of a few requests I've had recently, today I'm going to make another video featuring pickled eggs. In this video, I'm going to show you two versions of my modified keto, sugar-free, gluten-free version of a really tasty Amish pickled beets and eggs, which is a very well-known Pennsylvania Dutch recipe. In this version, I'm going to show you how to make the basic or classic Amish pickled beets and eggs recipe, as well as a spicy version. Before I give you the macros, I just want to say that for this recipe, I'm going to use one macro chart. That's because I don't have an accurate way to measure and determine how much of the brine ingredient was actually absorbed by each of the eggs. Therefore, this particular macro chart is an approximation based on the information I have. And even though the spicy version uses slightly different ingredients, the spices only add flavor to the brine. You don't eat them and they're discarded. So based on my best estimate, the macronutrient ratio I'm using for these Amish pickled beets and eggs is 1.4 to 1, with 1.8 grams of total carbs, 0.3 grams of dietary fiber, resulting in 1.5 grams of net carbs per large pickled beet and eggs. Now, the very first thing you have to do is to hard boil your eggs. To do that, get a very large soup pot and fill about 2/3 with water. Bring the water to a light boil and then carefully transfer the eggs into the boiling water. You'll notice that adding all of the eggs will bring down the water temperature. So put a lid on the pot. That'll help to bring up the temperature faster, and let the water boil for 10 minutes exactly. This will be a perfect hard-boiled egg without being too rubbery. And when your eggs are done at the 10-minute mark, scoop them out and transfer them into an ice water bath. I leave the eggs in this ice water bath for about 30 minutes. I want the eggs to be cool all the way through to the yolk. And after putting the eggs to boil, I'm also going to boil and prep my beets. Although you can buy prepared beets in a store very easily, most brands have a fair amount of sugar added, and that's not what we want on a clean keto diet. So to avoid the added sugar, I buy a few raw beets, peel them, which is very easy to do with a potato peeler, and then cut them up into thin slices. Get a small saucepan and add about 1.5 to 2 cups of water and drop in your cut beets. As I'm dropping the beets in, you notice the water is getting deep purple immediately. That's really good. Then place your pot on the stovetop, set to medium heat. Bring the water and beets to a boil, and as soon as it starts boiling, reduce your heat to medium-low and continue cooking at a light simmer for 5 to 8 minutes. You want the beets to be fork tender, but because we need the water, I would highly recommend you place a lid so that you don't lose too much of the water to evaporation. Now, for the basic version, I'm going to make a non-cooked brine. For this, simply pour 1 cup of reserved beet water into a bowl or container, and the next thing we're going to add is vinegar. I prefer to use white vinegar, even though some recipes call for apple cider vinegar. That's because the strong taste of the beets and eggs overpowers the apple cider taste, and I don't really think it makes a big difference to the taste. However, white vinegar costs a lot less than apple cider vinegar. So why not save a little and make it a more budget-friendly recipe? Now, to this liquid, I'm also going to drop in my sweetener, then stir well, and that's all there is to this basic non-cooked brine. After your eggs are cooled and peeled, drop a few in the bottom of a mason jar. I'm using about a 1-quart jar. Then take some of your cooked beets and place a layer on top of the eggs. Repeat with the second layer of eggs and the second layer of beets, and if your jar is big enough, your third layer of eggs and beets. I find that in this 1-quart jar, I usually put about 8 eggs. Then simply pour in the prepared brine and make sure that the brine completely covers the eggs. And then put the lid on securely on your jar. Then place your jar of pickled eggs in the refrigerator and leave them there for about 2 days before serving. Now the second recipe I'm going to show you is the Amish Pickled Beet and Eggs spicy version. This version has a wonderful sour but sweet spicy flavor. So let's start by making the cooked brine. To a small pot, add the beet juice water, add the white vinegar, get 1 cinnamon stick, crush it and put it in the pot. Also, drop in your whole allspice and your whole cloves, the sweetener. Place this pot over medium heat, bring to a boil and reduce the heat to medium-low and cook for 5 minutes at a very light simmer. And do stir occasionally. And now we prepare the mason jar like we did in the first version. Drop in a few eggs on the bottom, layer with your beets, and alternate until you've filled the jar. I found that in this version my eggs must have been a little bit bigger. I'm going to divide it into a big jar with the 8 eggs and the smaller jar with the 4 remaining eggs and beets. Now that that's assembled, all you have to do is pour in your hot brine directly into the jar, but do make sure that you distribute the spices between the 2 jars. Then place the lid on the jar and refrigerate, like with the first one, for 2 days. This will allow the brine to be absorbed into the eggs and all the flavors to develop beautifully. These eggs are ready to eat after 2 days, but the longer you leave them in the brine, the stronger the pickled egg taste will be. And to show you how beautiful these eggs look inside, I've cut 1 egg with my egg cutter, and I also need to take a thumbnail, so here they are. Don't they look beautiful? These eggs can be eaten as is or add them to any salad of your choice. Please let me know what you think of these 2 versions of the Amish Pickled Beet and Egg recipe. And do let me know what your favorite pickled egg recipe is. My sons really love pickled eggs, and your suggestions would be appreciated. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and please come back when I post my next one. Until next time, have a happy and healthy day. Cheers!